So my name is Tommy Palm, and as Chris said, I'm the games guru of King, and I'm here today to share some lessons that we learned from King on our, expanding our games to the East. This is a picture that we took in Beijing recently. This is my colleague Alexander standing out from the crowd as we were there visiting Tencent's office and announcing our partnership with them with Candy Crush this summer. Many of you have probably seen the commercial for Candy Crush on TV, but you haven't seen the Korean version. So I thought I would kick that off with a 15-second long TV commercial. Let me see.
기다려. Sugar Crush.
전 세계를 흥분시킨 모바일 퍼즐 게임 캔디 크러쉬 사가.
깼다!
I think that illustrates quite well, thank you, some of the differences between the countries. And I'll talk more about that today. But first, a short update on King, where we are today. So we're currently the leader in cross-platform social games, and we have about 800 employees across 7 studios and 4 offices. And today our games reach 352 million monthly unique players, or 143 million daily active players around the world. And King has been around for 11 years now, and we have transitioned from being focused on online, simpler flash games and going over to social games and the Facebook in 2011. And in 2012, when I joined King, started with these cross-platform games. And some of the games that we have today, you can see here, Candy Crush Saga, Farm Hero Saga, Pet Rescue that is made in Malmö office in Sweden, and the most recent addition is Bubble Witch 2, which is a sequel for Bubble Witch Saga, which was our first really big Facebook hit. So if you look at the top charts across the globe, you can see the Nordic countries overrepresented, especially if you compare it with the number of people who actually live here. And David Polfelt had the CEO of Massive Entertainment, had some really interesting views on that on the Nordic Game Conference a month ago. But I think that one interesting advantage that we have here in Finland and Sweden is that our home regions are so small, so very few of us would go out and make a game for this region. Most of the games are in English from the beginning, and we kind of aim for a global appeal originally. A common perception in the games industry has been that the Asian games market is really different from the Western games market, which in a way is an old statement because many of the IPs, big IPs, come from Japan originally. But I think it was especially true for the RPG genre for PC. About 10 years ago, I met with many Chinese and Korean developers that was looking for distribution in the West. And looking at those RPG games, it was obvious that they were very different from what we were playing in the Western market. I think the deeper the gameplay is and the more story, the more local the game seems to be. And which is not very strange because you tend to tie stories and characters to things that is familiar and local lore and background. This old belief has changed a little bit with casual games. Casual games are much more about getting players directly into the actual game mechanics early on. And in a game like Candy Crush, there's still a little bit of background story, but we portion that out as a sort of reward when you have played through many levels. And we've seen that at King that our players like to get straight into the gameplay as soon as possible, and that it's voluntary to see these cutscenes that come as a sort of visual reward for achieving something. And it can bring a higher meaning to the game, absolutely, but it's important that you don't have to follow what's going on in order to enjoy the game. If you look at the top 3 countries by revenue on the App Store, according to App Annie last year, the first country was Japan, second country was USA, and then it was Korea. And China is, of course, one of the strongest growing markets for mobile games. So there is a good reason for game developers here in the West to look at those markets. It doesn't necessarily mean that your game will make more money there than it will in the Western world, of course, but let's take a deeper look at the East. I think that mobile games today can certainly reach around the world, but it's not easy to be an expert on all these markets, and there is a lot of differences. And King has been focusing on expanding to these regions for some time now, and I want to share some of the learnings. One of the most obvious one, of course, is that Asia is by no means one country or one region. It's many different cultures that you need to treat separately. And one way we have been doing that is by opening up offices in Japan and Korea with local experts that knows how that region works properly and can help us with making market adjustments. So the TV commercial that we saw earlier is an example of that, for instance. Perhaps even more interesting than geographical expansion is the fact that new target groups are now being reached thanks to smartphones. I always thought that the generation that was about 10 years older than me would never convert to gamers, that from trying to show fantastic game to my immediate family. But with casual games, it's now starting to become obvious that everybody can be a gamer if you're really good at making your games accessible and easy to get into. Once the hurdle has gone that you don't have to make an upfront investment to try out games, it becomes so much more accessible to everybody. I found this third-party research online that is comparing the target groups of Clash of Clans and Candy Crush. So this is not, just to point that out especially, this is not from King or from Supercell. It's Newzoo that is releasing this. So I'm not vouching for the exact of these findings. But according to these, 7% of the people playing Candy Crush are between 51 and 65. And I definitely think that there is more room for expansion in that segment going forward. One of the big inventions with the App Store was that developers could now go straight to the consumers and removing a lot of middle hands in between. And if you look at the top chart now, you'll see a lot of the companies behind that are the developers and also publishers of their game. And this is a fantastic opportunity for developers to get more of the cake, of course, but it also comes with some new responsibilities. One thing that game developers needs to master today is properly gathering data and being able to draw conclusion from that. As a game designer, I've always felt that I learned most about the games that I've been working on when I stand behind the shoulders of somebody who gets the game in their hands for the first time, and I'm just quietly observing what's going on. And if you want to reach to the whole globe, it's very difficult to do that in all the regions, of course. So analytics, in a way, is one way where you can get that type of insights without having to be there. But it also puts a lot of demand on the developing these resources. Marketing is another big challenge for mobile game developers. Especially, I think this is difficult for smaller companies. One of the reasons is that marketing is never a linear equation where you can try out with $100 and assume that you will get double the result if you double your investment. One thing I often hear from small developers is that only thing that really worked for us is cross-promotion. When we got players into one game, they tend to love going over to the next game. But I think that it's important for even for small developers not to give up this. Owning the marketing segment is really important. And one way you can do that is by soft launching, and this is something that bigger companies do all the time. And soft launching, of course, means that we go to a smaller market originally and test the games and the numbers out there. And one question I get is what country is best to do this in, and it depends on where you have your target audience. You want a small country that acts the same way as the rest of the world. And Canada is widely used as a test market because it accurately reflects gaming behaviors in English-speaking regions. And by understanding how people react to the game and to marketing efforts, you can scale up. A really nice example of when soft launching is really good is what we had from when we released Bubble Witch Saga on mobile. We had something we called the black screen of death bug that snacks through 3 layers of extensive testing. We did a lot of QA before we released the game. And yet, here's a user comment, just a black screen. I tried 3 times to install this app on my iPad, and all I got was a black screen. And this was really awful from us from the inside because we couldn't reproduce this bug, and we were struggling a lot, and our rating was taking quite a beating, and the gamers that got this couldn't play the game at all, so there is little understanding that they were very frustrated. And we kept on trying to reach out to these consumers and try to get a hold of one of these devices that it worked. Finally, I actually called some poor lady in Canada and tried to convince her to come to Sweden with her device. She didn't think that was a good idea at all. Trust me, I'm from the internet. Another point I wanted to share is from localizing our game to different languages. Our in-house engine supports Bitmaps font. This is from Candy Crush Saga. So we basically package all the characters that we are using in big image files, and then we use the signs as we need them. And it's great for flexibility and for exact control of where you have your pixels. And it works great for eFigs, English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. But it becomes really complex when you deal with these Eastern languages where you have many different character sets. So what we have done in those cases is that we include a true type font for those languages. And it's very important to look at the size of that. The first font we looked at was 20 megabytes. Which is basically half the game size of the entire game, half the size of the entire game. So you have to be selective and only use a certain number of characters. Other difficulties can be to find a good gaming font. If you don't understand the character set, there is no way for me to see what looks cool and what is a classic system font. So they're typical where you need local experts who can help you out. Other things that we have is tools so that developers can see easily where the line breaks and how you can work with buttons and things like this. So just to summarize, I definitely think that smartphones is helping the world to shrink. We are getting common stories now with people around the globe are learning that chocolate is evil, for instance. Marketing and analytics needs to be local, whereas gameplay definitely can be global or even universal when reaching out to everybody. Thank you very much.